Welcome back, guys. Carboys here, back in another video where we talk about cards money investing. And today is episode 2 of our Buy the Numbers mini series. First of all, I want to say thank you very much for all the comments and support after the first episode, and I can't wait to share more stories with you guys of my MBA investing journey starting from 2019 to mid 2021. In today's second episode, we're going to explore my initial investments, the thought process behind them, and the decision that ultimately foregoing almost $60,000 in profits. All right, let's go. The 2019 NBA playoffs had to be one of the most memorable playoffs in many years that I can remember. Despite not being a Toronto Raptors fan, I was rooting for them all the way. And who can forget that amazing Game 7 from Kawhi Leonard? Just bring chills watching that all over again. But that moment, along with the Raptors' amazing run, basically triggered a renewed interest in the sport. And with it, of course, demand in collectibles such as sports cards. Notable influencers saw this coming, in particular Gary Vee, where he mentioned numerous times on the next coming of sports cards and how high he was on the Giannis base prism rookie card in PSA 10. Because I was just starting out, I was soaking all of this information, and Gary did his best job as an influencer, influencing me to believe that Giannis was the play as well. PSA 10 prisms were around $500 that time, but I figured BGS 9.5s were just as good, going for around $350 a piece. And so my first purchase, in the sports card investing world was 4 pieces of Giannis in BGS 9.5. Was pretty happy in my purchase, but at the same time, I was falling into the trap of buyer's remorse not long after. Not because Giannis wasn't a great player, he's the MVP after all at the time, but the purchase didn't feel right. It felt pushed, not well thought of. And now that was about $1,400 in on something I felt lukewarm only days after making the purchase. And bear in mind, right? So I'm from Malaysia, so it takes about 3 weeks before I actually get to hold the cards in my hand. So then it took a while to ponder where I wanted to position myself in this MBA card investing hobby space thingy. So obviously the performance of the current players affected prices of cards. We all know that, right? So that time people were predicting stuff like championship potential, MVP candidates, all-star appearances, etc. So I thought to myself, that was like playing the lottery, right? Wouldn't it be safer to go back to the tried and tested players such as the GOATs, right? And I'm referring to Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. And of course, the 2 cards that I had in my mind were his Fleer 57 rookie card for Michael Jordan 1986 and Kobe's 1996 Topps Chrome rookie. All right, so let's break down my train of thought, right? So around July to August 2019, Michael Jordan 1986 Fleer 57 rookie cards were priced as follows. PSA 8 around $2,500 to $2,800. PSA 9 was around $7,500 to $9,000. And PSA 10 was around $25,000 to $30,000, right? Now, ironically, there was a BGS 9.5 quad with all 9.5 subgrades listed on eBay for only $18,000, right? Now, I'll give you guys a few seconds to let this information sink in and put yourself in my shoes. Now, of course, on hindsight, we all would say, yes, let's jump on that PSA 10 at 30 grand because, we can 20x in about 18 months from now. Of course, we don't have the benefit of a crystal ball, right? So for me, given this, the price tag of the PSA 10 is definitely out, it's just because I'm just starting out, I didn't know, was I comfortable in splashing that much of capital onto a single card. Whether or not it's the best single card for the greatest player of all time, right? I trust most people watching this channel would agree that the assumption, without the benefit of that crystal ball I mentioned, this was probably the right thing to do. Even a BGS 9.5 at $18,000 was similarly as tempting, right? But if you guys watch episode 1 of this series, I'm from Malaysia, and with just $4, right, it buys me a pretty satisfying meal. So $18,000 equates to breakfast, lunch, and dinner for like 4 years. But more importantly, I wasn't really well versed in the market enough to really see the appreciation growth on the Fleer rookie cards. And having that much capital on a single card seems like a pretty high risk play. So it kind of came down to the PSA 9 and the PSA 8. Now I was basically comfortable on this price range and had the ability to either invest in a single PSA 9 or up to 3 PSA 8s. The PSA 9 was obviously the more superior card, and I was confident that both would increase in value in a similar pace. But I chose to go with 3 copies of PSA 8 for these reasons, and some of which might be something you guys have probably never thought about. Number one, I projected that at some point the Michael Jordan Fleer Rookie 86, would 2 to 3x in value, meaning a PSA 8 would increase from $2,500 to say $7,000, while a PSA 9 would increase from $7,500 to say around $20,000. Now, well, their growth rates might be identical, but the swinging point would be how many people will be able to afford a $7,000 card versus a $20,000 card. And you guys know how I always value liquidity, and having a larger potential audience obviously sways me towards that particular direction. Now, the second point is, having multiple copies of a single card also gives you that flexibility on when you can dispose at different points in time. So, meaning if say the Jordan was already up, let's say $5,000, for the PSA 8, you had the option to sell 1 copy first, which reduces your overall cost base by 50% on the remaining 2 PSA 8s. Or if you look at it from another angle, right, one of your Jordans is basically free. And this concept of cost averaging through sales is very important in managing capital. Sometimes we get carried away by potential earnings when not realizing that if we take some profit now, it's basically de-risking the remaining portions of your portfolio. And you will observe similar patterns in my decision making going forward as these two principles carry throughout my investing journey. And the last card I wanted to touch on, which rounded my initial investments, was Donovan Mitchell. Now, you guys can go back to one of my earlier videos entitled Player Focus on Donovan Mitchell to understand how Mitchell actually burned me not once but twice in my investing journey. But basically, the thought process was simple. Up and coming superstar, place the position of choice, i.e. the shooting guard, Team USA for the World Cup that time. So my thought process was a lot simpler back then, shooting guard, scoring machine, highlight reels. And the feather on the hat was the nod as a team captain for the men's basketball team, right? So wasn't even sure why that counted towards my investment decision. So these are the 3 players that kickstarted my investment journey. And these were the cards that I proudly invested in. So as you can see here, there are 4 Giannis Antetokounmpo 2013 Prism base rookie card and a BGS 9.5. I got them for average about like 300 to 350 kind of price range. Okay, and then there was the 3 Michael Jordan's 1986 Fleer 57, which I bought for 2,500 to the highest one at 2,800. And finally, 2 Donovan Mitchell's 2017 Prism Silver rookie card. One in a PSA 10 holder, and the other one was a BGS 9.5 quad, if I wasn't mistaken. And price was between the two. Didn't have much difference between $375 and $325. So the total investment on these 9 cards were around $10,000, which was my initial capital outlay that I planned, to enter into the sports cards fray. But when you look at this column, right, to the estimated peak prices of these 9 cards, I would have done very, very well, possibly bankrolling close to $60,000 profit if I timed the market correctly, right? So if you look at these peak prices, Giannis at this high point, I think the following season, was up to about $5,000, for a BGS 9.5. Just my estimate. I think I was trying to research on historical prices. I could find PSA 10s, but this was my best estimate for a BGS 9.5. Jordans, during the high period of the GOAT chase in early 2021. Now PSA 8s went as high as about $15,000. I think they may have touched 20, if I'm not mistaken, but I think 15 was the safe average. And Donovan Mitchell Prism Silvers went up for as high as 2,700. So, but instead of that, close to 60K profit, this happened instead. Yep, that's right, guys. $800 loss for about 15% of total sales, right? You're probably scratching your head. What? Right? Well, the answer was I got a little impatient and a little too conservative at the time, which were clearly 2 huge mistakes, right? So for starters, as the 2020 NBA season was gearing up, all eyes were focused on a second player named Luka Doncic, right? So there were plenty of hype on Ben Simmons, and I completely left out looking at LeBron James, which just added another superstar teammate, Anthony Davis, just months prior. But I felt I was already kind of tapped out with $10,000 in, and barely activity in any of the holdings I had. So instead of injecting new capital, I decided to swap inventory to move into different directions and selling off all but one of my initial 9 cards, incurring a small loss by today's standards, but I left so much upside on the table. So, once I look back at my amateur months during the start of this whole process, I can only smile, right? I never believe in regretting my decisions, as normally most investment decisions are made with sound justifications. Now, in my case, lack of experience, lack of patience, got the best of me and left so much profits on the table for someone else. Again, we wish we have that crystal ball, right, to dictate our investment decisions or have that time machine to do everything over again. But the lessons you learn from investing in cars can sometimes be quite brutal. And after looking back, I got a good taste of it early on. All right, that concludes episode 2. In the next episode, I'll share my experience on grading cars for the very first time and how that kind of changed the way I invested in sports cars. Thanks for staying up to this point. Do subscribe and be notified for upcoming episodes in this series. Once again, thanks for watching, guys. Car Boss out.